All right. I am pleased to introduce our panelists for today. Three of these artists are representing the work that they're doing in the Earthwork exhibition. We're going to start with Michael Belmore, and then we're going to ask Art Hunter to speak, and finally Lisa Myers. So I'll ask each of you to speak for 30 to 40 minutes, and then if we have time at the end, we'll be able to take questions, but I'll let you know how it's going. All right. 40 minutes. 30?
No,
if you feel
good.
It.
I feel it's like
all right.
Special.
First, Michael Belmore, please. Yeah.
Okay. Hello? Works? You can hear me? How about now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, all right. All right. I tend to talk with my hands, so sometimes this might go like that, so I'll try not to do that. I'm Michael Belmore. I'm a maker of things. I've always made things just like my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents. I think a lot of what I do is intrinsically natural in a way that I know that my grandparents had resolve in a way that they could live off the land, and while I didn't speak my language, as a kid, I could understand them, and I knew what they were saying, and it was one of those things growing up when my mom chose to not teach me our language for my best interest, and I have to respect that from her. And I think that's a really important part of my upbringing, and also something that has really, truly influenced my work. So I'm going to talk about, I was going to give the reward for who went out and stood outside while I was talking. All right, thank you. Thank you for coming out and standing there.
What's the reward for?
Oh, I promised to tell them what it says.
Oh, that's very kind.
I know, often I would not do that.
I know, I had to decode it myself.
So often, when I started working with a binary code, I would never tell anybody what my work said, and people would have to work at it. But, since everybody was out in the cold, all of you, right? All of you. And what it says on the outdoor piece is the piece is called drift, and it's actually a definition, one of the definitions of drift, and it's a steady movement or development from one thing to another that is perceived as unwelcome. So that's when I was saying it's kind of political, but not political. It's kind of political, not political. It's totally political. Okay, fine. So I'm going to talk about my work, and I'm going to go back to 2001. I was invited by Carla Garnett, a curator from Toronto. There was an exhibition space called Harbourfront, and she asked me to be in an exhibition about water. The exhibition was called Pool, and I said, oh yeah, no problem. And so I got back to her later and said, yeah, okay, I'm doing this piece called Brine, B-R-I-N-E, and brine is basically salt water. And so she was like, oh, okay, that's great. And I said, and almost everybody's work had this thing about water. And I said, well, my piece is going to be steel and copper and salt. And she was like, oh, okay. Where's the water? The exhibition is called Pool. And I said, it's there. It's there. And so I presented these pieces. And so these are essentially urban salt licks. So they're steel stands with copper tops with these sort of chevron-shaped salt blocks. It's really hard to see, but on the top of the salt is carved words that describe the landscape that has changed So looking at the Toronto urban landscape and looking at, there's 5 words and I can never remember them. There's forest, shoreline, meadow, something and something else. Damn. Anyways, I'm just going to move on from that. So there are these salt licks that sit outside, and I don't know if in Toronto you get, this is a summer show, so in Toronto you get these massive heat waves, and then you get these thunderstorms that roll through in the evening, or before it becomes evening. And so then you get these torrential downpours. And so this is sort of at the beginning of the exhibition, so all these words are carved into the tops. And then by the end of the exhibition, all those words are gone. So the forest is gone, the shoreline is gone, the meadow is gone. There's 2 more, I almost had them. And so the work is about water, but how the work is about water is important. And for me, from this exhibition, it became very clear to me that the work is very much about sort of those connections between materials and understanding those materials. In places like here and in Chicago and cities that feel winter and frost, and we've built out of concrete, and so there's this relationship where while we may build things, there is a conversation between other materials, other elements that continue without us. So we can consciously say, this is how we're going to make something strong and just rigid, but you introduce water and salt and sunshine and freezing. There's a conversation that happens between materials and elements that has nothing to do with us, has no interest in us. We are not important. So it's sort of, I was talking with my partner earlier this morning, and she said, if a tree falls in the forest. And I was like, yes, exactly. The forest doesn't give a crap whether you hear it or not. The forest isn't there for you. And I think that's really important. And for me, I think that's part of my practice and part of where I've come from as far as an artist making, that I wanted to engage in these longer conversations and to realize that there are a lot of conversations that happen regardless of us. And it's interesting as a human being, we have this sensibility of our own longevity, and there's always that thing of what you're going to see in your lifetime and in the time that you are here, and the things that you will achieve or the things that will mark your existence. Maybe it's, a tree falls in the forest, which is a hard thing to say. So it was interesting that in this exhibition, there isn't a lot of permanence to anything that's in the show. And I think that is a true response when you actually talk to the First Nations community, that, we have less need for that. We have less need for having to make our mark on the land. But I also carve rocks. So this is the ASCII code, and there's the uppercase and lowercase, and the uppercase and lowercase are very different from each other. And so I wanted to talk about that in a way that I went to school in the 90s. There was a lot of artists who worked in the 80s. And I don't know if you know this, but in contemporary art, especially in the 80s, there was a lot of words, big words. There was a lot of text. And I was in art school, and I learned to argue a lot. And, hold on. Wow, I'm getting thirsty here. I get nervous. But there was a lot of text. I'm going to steal this one too. Oh, that's mine. And being in art school, I had to often explain my position as an urban Indian in downtown Toronto, how I was Indian, or why I lacked aboriginality, was a word that was used on occasion in my work. And so for me, having to use words to describe things and to realize that all these words are English, and all these words are basically the words that were used against us in treaties, in words that were written, that I was basically being forced to do the same thing that my great-great-grandparents had to do when they signed away things, when in reality they didn't really sign away things, but we were just told that we signed away things, and this is how they wrote it. This is English. English is a weapon. It was a weapon that was used against us. And so for me, I used the binary code as a way to avoid that use of those words, but I still use those words. And so that's kind of important. And so I don't often use Anishinaabe. I've done a few pieces in Anishinaabe, but I like using English because I just keep that reference to that weapon that was used against us. And it's interesting, like, especially, I mean, English is kind of complicated. Like when you think about something and you say, oh, this is one word, and then you go, okay, this is two words. This means something. 3 words means something else. 4 words kind of means what you're talking about. Once you get to 5 words, then you're just, you can poke holes in it. That was one of the things I learned in art school, was that you could learn to argue about sort of the intrinsic value of how you string words together. And so I found the binary code as a way to hide from that. And so I was able to speak my thoughts without having, well, in a way, having a filter between what I'm saying and what I intend my words to mean. So what I started to do was take wampum or beaded belts, and using copper and aluminum, I would make my own narratives, often definitions, often with titles with one word, like drift. A couple of years ago, I was invited to Saugatuck in Michigan. I got see, I'm used to the cold. This heat is really getting to me. Saugatuck's on Lake Michigan. It has a beautiful sand beach, like really beautiful. And I was invited by this curator who found me on Instagram, and they said, well, we'd really like you to come to visit, and we can, spend a week here, and you can meet people. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And I go there, and I'm talking to people, and blah, 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 blah. And it was like, near the end of it, it was like, I still have no idea what I want to do for this show. And it was like just at the end of summer, and so they're going into fall, and everything was starting to shut down. And on the last day, I was like, okay, well, I better go down to the water, just in case. Just go down there again. And I go down there, and the township is putting up all these snow fences on the shore, because they use the snow fences to basically shore up sand in the wintertime, so that the sand doesn't blow down the river or move inland, or so that it stays on the beach. And so I was like, oh, this is amazing. It's like I found a connection to the place, a new way of connecting to the place. Then I get home, and just up the hill from where I live, and actually where I just live over the hill there, and you can see Toronto with the CN Tower. So this is actually really close, just north of here. On a good day, it's like 40 minutes. On most days, it's like an hour and a half. Welcome to Toronto and its traffic. And so it's interesting. No, I didn't put that image in. Never mind. Okay, but it's interesting, as Mick had said, these fences were used to stop the snow from basically crossing the road or being to travel across the road. And what's important about that is sort of how the fence technically works, where it's a mechanism that doesn't stop the wind, it doesn't stop the snow. It's about 50% coverage, so what it does is actually just slows the conversation down. So when I talk about like these materials, having conversations, speaking with each other, like how, you know, the Gardiner Expressway has steel and concrete and salt and rain and sunshine, and basically it keeps crumbling and breaking and they have to keep fixing it, and it keeps crumbling and breaking and they have to fix it. This works in a different way where it's very passive, where the conversation is something that has happened for a long time. This is something that farmers do. This is something roads people have done for many years. And it's not disruptive in a way that you're trying to actually force or change nature. You're actually just working with it, which is an interesting process. And it's an interesting thing to see. So this is sort of just showing you the binary code, just in case you can't visualize it. I have like the K, which is the 0, 1 1 0 1 0 1 1, and I'm just showing out here a section, which is the first ones, which are the 0 1 1 zeros, which is all lowercase. So that's kind of where I started to work with the snow fences. And I like that sort of connection to the snow fences being like wampum belts, and how they are basically storytelling devices that are speaking about the land, but not to the land. I think there was that exhibition that you curated with Rochelle, which is reading the talk. And I always think about that. It's about reading the talk. The talk isn't words, because in Anishinaabe, it's not so much about that. It is not the text that sits there that you take from the page. It's actually in our conversations. So when Mick first asked me to do an outdoor piece, this is the piece I did. And I basically made the piece and then ran onto my neighbor's property, and he has a nice field. It's not mine. I didn't ask. I just ran very quickly on a weekday on a sunny, well, it was sunny when it started. And then I stuck it up there and photographed it with my ladder. It was fun. And that's how it looked like the next day. And it was blowing in the wind. There's a picture of it the day after, because I didn't really put this in very well. And it crumpled and fell over and was twisted. And it looked really beautiful, but I don't think it would have been the same here. So this one's a lot more secure. So I think that's it. Oh.
I think it's on. You just have to, yeah. Would you like to take questions now, or should we have a larger question period after?
I can take questions now.
Take no? Sure. I had a couple, but also, if there's someone in the audience with a question, put up your hand and Melody will run to you with a mic. But I'm gonna go ahead and take the first one. Is this one? I wanted to come back just to the concept of wampum belts, because at the center of this work, it's about a conversation between things that we don't typically think might have conversations, right? So you're talking about the conversation between the salt and the concrete that we're trying to use at the Gardiner, and in this case, the conversation between the wind and the people who put up the fence. Just for a little context, I guess the wampum belt, if you're not already familiar, is a tool of Indigenous treaty making, and it encodes the talk, which you referenced Lisa's work show that she curated about. It was called Reading the Talk.
Yeah,
it was called,
and that term comes from an article, I think, Alan wrote about
Oh, okay.
wampum, so
Right.
I can't really say that I made it up that
Well, no, but
Yeah, but
I
it
believe
really-
it's a term that he references
Maybe he
too, that's in
references
wider
it, yeah.
use, because the wampum belts, they are mnemonic devices, you could say, and they have certain designs on them which aid the people who are charged with keeping memory of the treaty, aids them in the recall. So when you take out the wampum belts, you read them, or the caretaker reads them. But I was always struck by, on wampum belts, it's abstract imagery. And you spoke a bit about how abstracting out of or away from a direct English kind of, or a direct symbolism, helps kind of, well, not vague it up, but leave it a little bit more open.
Well, it's kind of interesting in the sense that I'm vaguing it up, but I like that. But it's also, I'm using your language. So I'm still using English, I'm using your language. I'm using binary code, I'm using your language. So I'm speaking to you in two variations of your language. But it's mnemonic, because you have to look at the pattern, and you have to be able to read the pattern to read what you've said. So I think that's part of it, and that's often why I use words and I use definitions of those words, because those are sort of the nomenclatures when you talk about sort of looking at treaties or understandings, in various understandings. So in wampum, it's not necessarily about treaty, but it's also about agreements of various things. Could be understandings of how our relationship between each other is. And so I think it's sort of really important to speak clearly, but not be comprehensible, which is an interesting way to think about it.
I was thinking that it demands a translation, even though you're saying it's your language, but you're encoding it so it demands a translation, even though it's the language that we are speaking right now.
Yeah.
So I feel like translation becomes this kind of.
Well, I mean, it's imagine signing a treaty that's written in a foreign language and is spoken to you by foreign people that say, yeah, trust us, it's fun. That's what it says. And you sign something and you learn what you learn, and you learn what free education means. It's not exactly what you thought free education meant. It was something else.
That makes sense. So there's a lot about miscommunication and slippage of kind of, well, the slippage possible on paper documents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and
Deception.
intentionality.
Deception.
Deception.
All right, we have a question in the back. Melody will bring you the mic.
Hi. When you started talking about interpretation, I took your lovely fences and the way that you created it, and I saw music with the lines and everything going on your artistic portrait. And I heard music, and it was like the ancestors were talking, and it's like the wind can blow through your fences and you can hear noises. And that's what I felt, and I thought it was very, very beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, the idea of music also, it's a step removed from
Yeah,
direct translation.
there's a Ho-Chuk artist, Truman Lowe. He has a show up at the Smithsonian in Washington right now, like when they open. His work, there's a series of works that he's produced which are like these canoes filled with feathers. And in it, he talks about sort of the idea of sort of the wind capturing moments, and those feathers being moments or shedding of ideas or thoughts, and how they find themselves sort of. That's probably me. Battery's dying. Okay, die. Anyways,
Your battery?
I don't know. I think I'll stop swinging my hands around. That's probably the issue. It's all hold very still. Okay. But sort of his work, I think, really influences my practice, and that there are those subtleties, I think, in his works that sort of speak to sort of capturing moments. And I think a lot of what I'm interested in are those small moments and capturing them and sharing them, but not sharing them in the sense of being very clear or hitting you over the head. It's, you know, same as my sort of, when I say my work isn't very political, but it's kind of political, those nuances that are in the words that I choose and how I selectively place them is meaningful. And yeah. I don't want to go too far because I'll start talking for another 45 minutes. Oh.
Hi, I hope I understood it correctly, but just in case. So you described that the fence contained the letters within it. And so my question was that looking at the last image, it seems that you can't necessarily distinguish the letters because the color change is not necessarily visible. So how is the meaning of the artwork changes if you can't necessarily see the actual word that you're trying to put in?
Well, the answer is yes, but... So, I mean, these are older fences, so there is a lot of subtlety. And I think for the last image, this was just a beautiful image.
Okay.
It was not meant to be seen this way. I never intended that this is what it was going to look like, but you know, there's a moment when you're sitting in your kitchen and you look out the window and you go, oh my God, the sun is beautiful, and it's a snowstorm out there and there's sunshine, so I'm going to run out there in my shoes and my t-shirt and get a picture as I kneel down in the snow and get this picture because it's stunning. So I think maybe this will happen here. Well, just like the other day in the morning, I was like, Mick, when are you getting to U of T? Can you run outside? It's snowing right now. Can you please go out and find and capture a picture? And so it was great that we do have pictures of it. And maybe we will get a big snowstorm when it's going to be sunny, and I'll be messaging you again to do that.
I'll also just take a moment to mention we wanted to install this work outside when seasonally, so it didn't get installed at the start of the exhibition, and it'll go beyond the end of the exhibition because we wanted to make sure that it was understood as a seasonal work. So the work the sculpture that is currently outside of King's College Circle, it will be there until the end of snow season, probably March. Okay. I think we can take one more question, or we'll also make time at the end for the questions to percolate, so we can come back to it as well. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end, and we can pass it over now to Art Hunter. Thank you very much, Michael.
Bonjour, everyone. I want to first say a thank you to Mick for inviting me here and putting my photographs into this exhibit. It's a great honor. Also to Pamela Clausen again for the invite to the Mounds Memory. I also want to see one of our elders in the front. From Shoal Lake First Nation, Mr. Robert Green, Bonjour. So I want to talk a little bit about the Prairie Oak Savanna that we have at Kinachuanung, the burial mound site. Our site, like the gentleman before me, I can't remember who the first speaker was. Mike? No. Chad. Yeah. Yeah, he talked about the Serpent Mound over at Curve Lake, I think. Hiawatha. I've been there 1998. I went and visited that site. And a lot of similarities in the story where our site is, Kinachuanung. Along the Rainy River, there were 7 reserves. The Little Fork Reserve, Manitou Rapids, Long Sault 12, Long Sault 13, and then at the west end of the Rainy River, where it meets Lake of the Woods, there were 3 other reserves there called Pasconkin, Bishop, the Wildlands Reserve. All of those reserves, except Manitou Rapids, all the people were forced to move 1914, 1915. Forced to move to Manitou Rapids. The land was taken illegally. And so now Manitou Rapids is made up of those 7 different reserves. Even before the reserve before treaty, we lived there, and it's evident when you see the burial mounds. Been there for thousands of years, and so Kinachuanung, the site itself, after around the late 60s, the government declared it a National Historic Site, 1969, and we're always learning new things. One of our former chiefs told me it was official in around 1974, 1975, that piece of property became National Historic Site because of the burial mounds. We have 15 documented burial mounds on that site, largest concentration of mounds in Canada. And so it is our duty as the stewards of that land to take care of it. And so we actually we have a historical site there, and a museum. It's not really a museum. It's a historical site. It's a place where the elders wanted someplace where we could tell our story. And so that's Kinachuanung. And we have many good people working out there. Archivist Jesse Richard, who has been working diligently and trying to sort through all our archives and as well as working on repatriation. 2019, we had a repatriation of many artifacts and ancestors that were taken from the burial site there, the burial mounds. Long Sault site, also Hungry Hall area where Pasconkin Bishop wildlands were. A lot of digging, flooding when they built the roller dam up in Kenora, and there's also a dam in Fort Francis International Falls. So the river water level is really controlled even to this day. So today how we take care of that land and the burial mounds themselves is one thing we do is a prescribed burn every spring. It didn't happen this year because there was a fire ban. And so being someone who is always there. I've been there all my life, off and on, tour guide, site manager, now I'm education programmer. So wear a few hats there, but I love it there. It's peaceful. You can really feel the energy there, the spiritual energy. And many people have said the same. So it's a very special place to me. And back in 2012, Pamela Clausen came and was interested in coming there. And one of the things was she talked about this missionary, Frederick Duvernay, and that passed through there. So that's how I got to know Pamela, and so I'm very lucky, and I'm really happy to have met Pamela. And I'm just kind of nervous, because this is kind of the largest crowd I've actually talked in front of. But I want to say thank you for each and every one of you for being here. So at our site, we have a unique ecosystem called Prairie Oak Savanna. And so with the burn, we want to try to preserve that. So here's a little thing about savanna. Currently in Minnesota and throughout the Midwest, oak savannas are an extremely rare plant community with less than 0.5% remaining. Globally, oak savannas in northern latitudes are one of the world's most endangered ecosystems. An oak savanna is a community of sacred scattered oak trees above a layer of prairie grasses and forbs. The trees are spaced enough so that there is a little to no closed canopy, and the grasses and forbs receive plentiful sunlight. So this is one of the big mounds at the site, and this is actually after the burn. So when the burn happens, it's all black. We burn from tree line to tree line, and that is to help with with all the plants and things to keep growing the rare plants, like the pink flowered, that's wild bergamot. The purple one is giant blue hyssop, 2 of 7 mints that grow on the savanna, as well as many different plants and trees that we still use today, our elders still use today as medicine. So this little piece talks about, before European settlement, oak savanna covered roughly 10% of the state. I don't know if you know what Minnesota state looks like. It's a pretty big state. So imagine 10% of that state being covered with oak savanna. And now, pretty much hardly anything. It's endangered. So we want to try to preserve that. This is part of the burn. You can see where the fire is starting. There's little shrubs or little saplings. That's kind of what we want to try to control or eradicate. Those are poplar. So there's 2 species of poplar, trembling aspen and balsam poplar, that grow like weeds. Like if you cut them, they're just going to keep growing, sprouting up from the ground. It's called suckering. And so that's one of the reasons why we do the burn. So we'll burn it all the way from the tree line all the way to the riverbank. That's the oak savanna that we have at Kinachwanang. So this is a photo of the total burn. I'll go past this. Oh, I don't know what happened here. Yeah, but there's a There's the burn again. And we have a trail system going through there. It's a 3-kilometer trail system, right from the main building all the way to the end, where the big mound is. And so this is always has been there for a while, like this trail. We use it for tours. So we take people out and we show them the mounds. We talk about the vegetation, the oak savanna, and the burn. So you can see right by the big oak tree on the left-hand side, that's one of the burial mounds. They range in size. There's small ones, and then there's the great big ones. Over the one at the end is 25 feet high. Again, you can see the poplars growing in there. We want to try to get rid of those. And that's what it looks like after the burn. Probably about, I don't know, 2-3 weeks. Hey, Jesse? Yeah. After the burn is done. So it's nice and green. Everything is growing. I think this is Jerusalem artichoke. Many medicines too. This one here, we call that namapin in the language. Wild ginger. Wild ginger is one of the medicines that is used. A lot of elders still come there to pick namapin. This one here is bloodroot. Can't remember how you say that. How do you say that, Robert? Muskogee, yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the first plants that usually comes up in the spring. This is yellow bellwort. This one here, this one is called Hori Pacoon. It's a provincially rare plant, and it only flowers in that one area, as far as I know. Like, I haven't walked the whole savanna inch by inch, but this is the only place that I've seen it grow, and it comes back every year after we burn it. Even when we miss the burn, it still comes back. So you can see bloodroot up top. There's some namapin growing in. So the plant life is very special out there. See the big pink flower? That's wild bergamot. The other mint, what's that one flower? You know what the cows don't like that? Oh, the monarchs like it. Yeah, milkweed. Yeah, so you can see some milkweed in there too. So you see a lot of monarchs there too because of the milkweed. Big purple bluebell, I think it's called. And we have woodland tiger. No, it's not tiger lily. I have to brush up on my my plants and things, but yeah, there's a lot out there, and they're all oak savanna. I managed to catch this monarch mid-flight. It's so last year there was this year there was hardly any monarchs, and I probably only seen maybe 3. And I don't know if it's because we didn't get the burn or the monarchs are in trouble somehow. And there's 3 of our tour guides. So, yeah, the burn is very important that we keep doing it year after year to bring back those plants. That's one of the ways we take care of the burial mounds. We also have burial mounds, like I said, in our community of Manitou Rapids. We also do a burn there from the whole riverbank. We do the burn there as well. So, yeah, that's really how we take care of this land, and we want to continue to do that. And we try to invite the young people to show them that we're not just making fire, we're doing it for a reason. So that's the Savannah and the burn. Miigwech.
All right, Miigwech chart. I'm hoping to open it up to have some questions, but I'm going to take the first one just to get us to get it going. And then I see one hand over here, so I'll take the first question, and that lady has the next one. Thank you. Art, you ended off by showing us some of the tour guides, and also we saw when you were talking some of the people doing the controlled burn, I believe, are community members. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about how the community is engaging with this, and how maybe Kanachwinong has been a site where people are learning how to do those stewardship practices again.
Our community has always had a fire team, and so a fire team, first response team. Although we haven't had a real organized one in recent years, we're hoping to start that all up again. But volunteer firefighters in our community always want to come out and get their practice in, but a lot of them that come out there see the place and they're just amazed by it, because some of them actually haven't seen the burial mounds, even though we live probably 15 minutes away. And there's many local people that don't even know we're there and why we're there. And so, yeah, the community members on a volunteer basis come out and help. They enjoy doing it. And
Yeah, that's great. I just wanted to know more about people, how the burn itself also works. Do you have to train certain people to be able to do that, or is it always guided by yourself?
man, as kids, we started fires all over the
Early training.
Yeah. So we know, growing up on the res is totally different from being in an urban setting like here, yeah. So that was kind of the thing. When I was growing up as a kid, my dad would, in the springtime, make us go burn the grass in the back or whatever, and he would make us carry a big pail of water with a rag. So if it got out of control, we'd have a rag and water and be able to control it that way. So even that, he wanted it burned not just for a fire, but because there's a lot of strawberries that grew out there. And I remember picking strawberries out there in the summertime with my mother. So yeah, growing up, we always had respect for fire, because if it got away, then we're in trouble. So yeah, the fire has always been a way to control things, to help plant life that we wanted to come back. So, yeah.
Okay. Great. All right. We had one question over here.
Yes, I wanted to ask if you know how your people came to understand that fire control fires in the way that you do helps revive the land and its vegetation, or is really just something that kind of was passed from generation to generation, and we kind of know now that this is the thing to do on your side of things?
Yeah, it was a common practice, passed down from generation to generation, thousands of years. When they were doing the digs, they also did what they called habitation site digs. So they were finding old fireplaces, things like that, so, and evidence of burning. So to answer your question, yes, we have always known that fire is good if you control it. Like forest fires are not so good, especially if they're started, by individuals because they want to fire, or by lightning strikes is a different story. So our places where we live, we can control that, and it's always been like that. So it's been a way of life.
Wonderful. All right. Any other questions? We can pass the mic back. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how to talk. I really love hearing about it because also well, I don't know how long they've been doing controlled burns in High Park, and also I saw people, like neighbors, living, like I live a couple hours north of here. I'm in Toronto a lot though, I would say, but I do see my neighbors doing burns just like the way you describe your dad sending you out to do that. But yeah, it's fascinating, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. I think we have somebody in the crowd who might know. How long has the High Park burn been going on? I saw Kai over here. It's been a few years now, but yeah. It's a black oak savanna here, but I think it's the same thing. And it's a remnant. The High Park is one of the few places in Toronto that has not been developed, or the way it's been developed has allowed those old oaks to still be there. So, yeah, more of Toronto used to be maintained in that way as an open savanna. Yep. All right. Again, we'll have time at the end, I think, for further questions if you have something percolating in your mind. But for now, I'm going to pass it over to Lisa Myers. I will make I'm going to make a couple comments first of all on the transition. Just listening to Michael, I'm struck by the importance in all of what we're talking about here of our different communities' relationships to territory in terms of where you're free to go, where you're free to pass. I was just thrilled when I went up to Kanachwanong that you guys have stewardship of your own ancestral site. That's so important. And it struck me by contrast how asking we're all Anishinaabe up here, right? This is the Anishinaabe panel. Not by design, but both of you are Anishinaabe, and Lisa, you're from a nation that is from one of the Williams treaties, so your relationship to the Toronto territory is a little bit fraught more than most. But it struck me that in the course of asking you guys or commissioning you guys to do work for this exhibition, I've caused you both to trespass on various private property places. So but I think that's interesting as well, that we don't, the question of access to territory and where we're able to go and to do our land-based work. So anyway, with that, Lisa, please.
Thank you. I unapologetically trespass all the time, so don't worry. Thank you for everything. Thank you for inviting me to this panel, but also, Mick, thanks a lot for inviting me into the show, and I learned a lot. It's not like just I learned a lot, but I feel like you reflected something back at me that I was doing that, I don't know, I felt really encouraged and supported through making this the work that I made for this show. And thanks for everyone's talks. I might get up because I can't see really. Just one sec. I don't know if birds will fly around me or land on my shoulder, though. I'm not quite as I think it's more of an art thing than, we'll see. Anyway, so I was trying to think about how to, I can talk about my work in general. What I talk about a lot when I kind of think about my work is, someone told me quite a while ago to bring your whole self to the work you do. And one thing that I did for many years was I worked as a cook. And in doing that work, it was at an organization a couple hours north of Toronto. And I cooked for a lot of people and families. And it wasn't like one nation, it was multiple nations that different people would come because we were off reserve. But also took care of a garden, and I learned a lot about, I learned as much as I could in my early or mid-20s about plants and medicines. But I did work on medicine gardens. And so I also play music, and I also I think my work has it draws from those experiences of feeding people, and not only feeding people, but feeding people in what they need physically, what are other ways that we need nourishment for many years. But also, I took to using walking and walking to kind of respond to place. I realized that my work has I guess I had to reflect more recently on what is it I'm doing, and responding to the place that I'm from, and I'd say I'm from the Great Lakes area, has a lot to do with my what I do in art making, and I guess maybe curatorial work as well. And I think I was reflecting on that a lot this summer because I was asked to make work for a show in Newfoundland, in Bonavista, Newfoundland, and in doing that, I was like, I don't really know how to make work there, because I was like, I've never been there, and then I did end up figuring that out because I was thinking about the way saltwater and freshwater connect. So I thought about it through the waters, but the place where I was going to be putting the work was completely surrounded by blueberries, and blueberries are something that, not where I live now, but where my mother grew up, and many of my relatives, is a blueberry area. So I was thinking about that. So these are things that I think about, and plants all sort of pop up in those things. But I'm going to talk about this work for this show. And I was very inspired I used to be very fortunate to have a studio in a house, this old historic house up on York University. York University is a university in the north part of Toronto, near Keele and Steeles, between Steeles, Jane and Keele on Steeles, and whatever, it's up there. And I was, in 2016, got a job at York, and a friend of mine said, they asked, how do I negotiate whatever I want at this job? And he's like, you should negotiate a studio. And so I did. And so I got this studio, and it's in this rundown house. It was quite rundown, but it's a house from the 1860s, and it's referred to as the Stong House. And it's a house that was the original German loyalists were given this land. So it was an original settler, kind of 400 acres they were given, and York University bought that land to create, in part of the land, like that land is part of the whole campus. So, over since 2016, I've been using one room in that house, and but then in the past year, the other artist who was on the main floor was no longer there, and so students and I took over the house and cleared it out, put a lot of work in, and we had a show, and each room had a different exhibition in it. And so I'm just showing you one room. This is one room in the house where the students Ever Palma Hernandez and Megan Tay created an installation with plants, and the plants were gathered by those two students Ever works a lot for the City of Toronto and in parks and grounds, in other ways, in conservation, studies conservation, is studying Indigenous planning right now. And he knows plants, like he knows he knows a lot about plants. And in walking through this, so this space was, oh, I have a clicker. I was like, we don't have to stare at this picture. I think I need to drink water first. Thank you. So when I was putting this together, I thought, oh, this room really made me think. This room was really inspiring so this was last March. This is one of the exhibitions. So there was plants that were hung, as you would maybe hang medicines if you picked them through the season, growing season. Anyway. And some of the furniture happened to be there. There's lots of stories to this space. But what inspired me, I would say there's a connection between this space and the work that I did for the show, Earthwork, in that Ever Palma, I asked Ever if Ever would work with me to think about not only the Stonghouse that I'd been thinking about for about a year really intensely, and the barn that was behind it, but the land around it. Because I was thinking about, we can look in the archive at what this house is, or what this house was, and the stories from the people who lived in this house. But I was interested in thinking about what plants are here, and what kind of understanding do I gain by getting to know the plants and paying attention to the very small things in the world around the grounds of this house. So through the summer, we did a plant survey of the grounds around this house. And the methods that Ever and Tiva, two students who are working on it with me, as well as Lou Holloway, Ever and Tiva have a biology kind of science background with plants. Tiva looked at, they're both master's students. And so I asked them if they would do like a co-learning kind of project. I'm not from a science background. I went to art school with Michael. I was at OCA here in Toronto back in the late 80s, early 90s. And but I'm really interested. I've collaborated with conservation scientists on some projects. So these students joined into this research where we made walks around the grounds 8 times through the summer. We visited the plants. And sometimes, if there was something new happening, we would pick a little bit of that plant to sort of think about, to sort of keep a record, I guess, of what kind of stage they were at. And then Tiva taught us how to press the plant so that we can keep them for looking at later and talk about that. We took photographs of it. So we did this plant survey, and it was a little bit different than a science sort of approach. Scientists usually put down like a meter square thing, and you can only study what's inside that square. And there's different methods that are that are taken up. But we decided to do walking. And so when I was asked to do this work and think about responding to the Richard Serra work, which is north of Toronto in a field, it's a concrete sculpture that is 2 lines that are zigzaggy. I should have brought the aerial view, but I didn't. And these walls they're concrete walls, they represent. So this work was made by Richard Serra in 1974, maybe, and he was invited it was an art collector who owned this land, and he invited Richard Serra to make this work for him on this field. And what Richard Serra did was he asked a friend to stand at one end of the field, and he stood at the other, and they kept each other in view. To keep each other in view, they had to walk a certain way, and these lines represent that walk. And some people walk through fields, and that's all they do, and some people walk through fields and build concrete walls. So Mick and I, yeah, this is it. So this is when we first saw it, like when we finally kind of got close enough, because there are hills in this field, so you have to really get into the deepness of the field. This field is north of Toronto. There's not like any public, there's no public interpretation. There's no like, it's not accessible. It's not really. I even went on like Reddit to see if there was any like anybody to tell us how to get there. We figured it out. So Mick and I hiked out to do with the intention of making work in response to this, to think about this, not about this work, but in response. I took up what I learned from the students that I was collaborating with and thought about what can the plants. I mean, the original idea, the question of like, what can the plants tell me about this? The land around that house at York. This, I wanted to think about what can the plants tell me or indicate? What plants are here? What roots are, negotiating with the concrete that is buried? Yeah, so that's what we did. There's Mick, contemplating. So you can see along the wall, it's a little less lush. This field was planted with soybeans, but I've seen photographs of it where it was potatoes. Another year it was corn. And so I went, and you can see here, this is areas where there are rows, but then they disintegrate a little bit when it gets close to the wall. So the farmers just plow around it and seed around it and harvest around it. That margin space between the crop and the wall, there are a range of plants. There's some milkweed, there's calf's foot, there's something called butter and egg. They're like a little snapdragon. There is pigweed. There is horsetail. There are Virginia creepers. There are milkweed, and I got a monarch picture too, just to. What's that? Oh, am I going too far away? And so there's monarch, and okay. And so from that, I created this. I did take some samples, and I did pressings. And instead of thinking about, and this is what we did with the other project, the plant survey, instead of thinking about those plants in terms of taxonomy, like in terms of like, what are the Latin names? Identifying them is important, but I think we wanted to try to hold ourselves back from just sort of stopping at or maybe not holding ourselves back, but letting us go beyond just identifying them and putting the name to them, or even just like saying this is for this is a medicine for this. We wanted to think about like how does our sort of relationship build with these plants, and that's where the story that connects the plants in the work in Earthwork came from. I started projecting this house into the future, and this character, Solus Oziban, exists 100 years from now. And what we decided as our collective plant survey group was that we actually learned how to do what we were doing from Solus. And this was Solus, and we decided this was Solus's place where he lives in the future. And so the story that is around the plants is the way the plants guide Solus around his 100 years from now, 99.5 years from now, exploration of shift. So I would assume in that future, shift exists, and so does the house still. And in the story, Solus doesn't know whether they're hallucinating or what is happening, but there's a moment where the wall lifts into the air and then falls back down, and what it ends up being is the roots negotiating, not the roots rejecting it, but the roots negotiating this structure. that there's a flex that happens periodically, and so the shift falls back down, but the roots are still negotiating that space in the story. The highlight of the trip, though, out there was hiking with Mick out to this field, and we walked along the field's edges. The field's edges still have some old maples, and so there's like mossy bits. There's the non-agriculture. It's like this little margin that maybe isn't original growth, but we found bloodroot and blue cohosh, and these two were plants were really special to me when we came upon them. So this was our hike out to shift out to the sculpture, and we were paying attention to everything that was there along the way. And blue cohosh I've never seen in real life. I've only read about it in books, so that was special. But bloodroot was a plant that, when I was in high school, I had a science teacher who showed us bloodroot, and he said, and you can make, it has red pigment in it, and you can make, people would dye things with it, but kind of was like, and so I thought, I was in art class in that time, and I thought, oh, I want to paint a picture with bloodroot one day. Or no, I think I even thought I would do it that year. But being 15 and not really remembering what the plant looked like and not really getting it together, I never did. But when we came across it, Mick picked some root for me. And that is the pigment that is along the pages of the work in Earthwork. And I used it to dye some fabric as well. And so I feel now I have painted a picture with bloodroot. So to me, it was really special. And also to see bloodroot in the savanna, as well as the Neme ping? Yeah, the ginger, wild ginger. And yeah, and also when we were entering to hike out to this, the bergamot. There was bergamot everywhere, but when we were just going off this. So there's a lot of plants in common, which I really liked in our presentations. So I guess I'm telling you the story of the work in the exhibition, as well as I have another work which is about sunsets, which Solace, I think Solace came to me as a name. It kind of references sun in some way through another language, but it also has the connotation of being kind of a solitary. So this character I created from the future, is very solitary and is very is really invested in, or not invested in, but their life is about the plants around them for survival, but also companionship, I think. Anyway, and I made this video about using the sunset photos for my grandpa, which are very dark in this photograph, so you can't see, but they're animated. And he took photographs for many years, so I wanted to bring those into my work. I think that's all I'm going to say. I think that we're probably running out of time. Oh, I'll end it with, I got kicked out of my studio, and my projection of the house into the future is it's in my mind still, but we're not sure what's going to happen with the house. So I made Solace's room on the porch and brought his desk out. And we had a big exhibition that we were planning on having in the house. We ended up having it outside, which was a result of the plant survey. And that is something we're putting up in our little student gallery in our faculty at York. And I think that's all. So I'll say, there's me, Miigwech. I wouldn't mind also just mentioning, just a little shameless plug, but I worked on a podcast called Sounds Like Land with a really amazing team, and the episode that I hosted, it hasn't come out yet, but I talked to Leanna Marshall, who's from, she lives in Thunder Bay, and she's from KI though, but she talks about wild ginger as her favorite, and talks about the connection between Neme and Nemeping in a little bit. So anyway, if you want to check it out.
All right, thank you. Thanks. All right, once again, I'm gonna take the first question, but if you have questions for Lisa, please put up your hand and Melody will hand you the mic. I wanted to ask you, first of all, you mentioned that part of your practice is about walking the land, and that as a way of relating to plants. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that. When we went to shift, what was that journey like for you, and how did it kind of become that narrative of this other person?
Yeah, thanks for that. It was very hot that day. I have to remember that. It was 38 degrees. Anyway, that's what comes to my mind at first. I think about well, we went through a lot of different areas. We went through a swamp. We went through these rocky kind of hardwood little margin that might have been a hardwood forest at one point. We walked along cornfields. We found somebody's honey production. We found somebody's sawmill. There was it was almost like we were, I actually was watching some of the video and I said, oh, this quest. I felt like we were on a funny, interesting quest, but that the end result, it wasn't like we were in a video game winning something in a quest, but it made me feel like there was a kind of sense of that, and that made me want to think about a character that, would not know the art historical context in which this piece was created. In the story, I think Solus comes upon, Solus feels these vibrations from the wall's vibrating, and Solus feels the vibrations at Stonghouse and is drawn to it to the point where they can't handle it anymore, so they go to find the source, and they come upon this sculpture, but they think it might be the results of old buildings or something. And so I think I just was thinking about character building. I was thinking about some games that are created that way, and I liked the idea of the anti-quest, which I made a work called Over Asking, Overtaking, which was very much in response to gentrification, but also thinking about we're in urban space, but we're also on land that is Indigenous land. So I think there was that kind of thing. I was thinking about the anti-quest as a kind of about maybe understanding our relationship to something rather than winning something. So I guess maybe that was part of it. Oh, I wanted to say something, because earlier you were saying about the story work book, and I remember Maria showing me that book, but I haven't actually read that book, or I don't really know much about the Archibald or something. Or what? Yeah, I don't know a lot about that, but now I'll check it out. But I was kind of going into story as a way to go beyond just identification of plants and that kind of thing, trying to think about what is this? I don't really know. It was more of an exploration. So anyway, just wanted to say that.
All right, cool. Yeah.
So in thinking about the life of Solus, the character, and this kind of post-industrial, biotic, verdant, future that they're experiencing, the way that I understood and felt in looking at the work in the museum was that, and you just kind of got at it, that plants were more and they were agents to some degree. And I just wanted to know if you could speak more on the lifting with the roots and the conversation with that, because I didn't catch that or I missed it, but I was just curious about that.
I don't actually tell you that in the story.
Okay, yeah.
But there's an additional audio piece that is a transmission that isn't in the work yet, because it's still being worked on. I'm the worst. But there is in the story that the wall rises, right? And Solus is, I don't know if you caught that, it's near the end of the story, because you kind of got to go around the table. But yeah, and I was thinking, when I was writing the story, I had some ideas, but I really wrote the story on sort of right beside that table there. And the story, that point, was supposed to be a kind of point of whether the whole thing was a dream or the whole sort of story, I guess it was kind of trying to throw some kind of disbelief. I mean, you have to suspend disbelief to get into the story anyway, but I think that was an extra kind of way to wonder whether this person was recounting a dream or if they were actually experiencing this through their journal writing. And I guess it was a kind of a way to throw in a question of reality, but also, and I didn't exactly know why it would happen until a few weeks later when I realized it was the Roots that were negotiating that. And it wasn't just the Roots rejecting it, because I think that would, I don't think that was the right kind of twist that it needed to. But anyway, so yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's, yeah, that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any other questions? I do have something I want to ask you about if we don't have someone else with the immediate question. All right. Think about your question. I want to bring it around to the topic of development, because that's kind of in the background of not only the work Plant Signals responding to shift was the housing development in that area, which is, I guess is it a part of what we call the green belt around Toronto here? And so I wonder if you could speak about not only development as a colonial force that we're navigating, and as well as how that's impacted you, because you referenced losing your studio. I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think it's really important to think about, because I think, I have so many things to say. I'm just trying to think. It's ironic that the sculpture is actually, the one that we're standing behind, whatever. I should change the picture, but the sculpture that Richard Serra's work is actually preventing at the moment, preventing some development up there. And there's a lot of subdivisions that are like very luxurious, large homes which we parked in front of to hike in there. And
on Richard Serra Way.
Yeah, that's right. The streets are named after the artwork, but they don't really show you where it is, but it's really strange. So I think there is we can see this sort of push for very fast, building more roads down here, more highways, and making accessible more, I think it's like a lot of very luxury housing, so it's not actually, I don't know that it's solving any housing crisis, which we are experiencing here in the city. That it doesn't seem that people are really talking about it, but we do have one here in many cities. And I think what it's doing is adding more ability to financialize real estate for people to make more money. I think there's also, I think it does also connect. So yeah, I don't know but it's funny that the sculpture is actually stopping because everyone is putting up an uproar about the possibility of developers. I think a developer does own this field, and they rent it out to farmers. But people I think they did get some kind of legal thing to say that you can't disturb it at this point, but that doesn't always work. Like the building I was talking about, the Stong House, is from the 1860s, and it has heritage designation, I think, through Toronto, and there's an application for it to be an Ontario heritage building, but that doesn't mean they can't just willfully neglect it and let it just crumble into the ground, which is, whatever, like, go ahead. And it feels ironic that I feel upset about this, early settler house, but I kind of took it over, and I really was trying to make it into something that was under the radar of the university, trying to make something that was really fun for students to inhabit and do what they wanted with, and but also maintenance is important, so they didn't fix the roof, so now they deem it not safe because mold might grow because water got in and la la la. So anyway, so I think there is one thing though that I do think is that all these new builds, I feel that there is a lack of care or for for York University specifically, and I did tell the president this myself in person, that she shouldn't be building more things because she doesn't take care of what she has. And I think I think that's a very important principle that I was taught by my mother to, take care of the things you have. And it's pretty basic. But anyway.
All right, just to provide a little more context, the studio that she references being kicked out of, this historic house that the university kind of gave you as part of their obligation to provide a studio space, right? And it is one of the ways you get around the kind of the heritage house designation when you want to make a development on an area of land is you neglect it until it's condemnable, and then you're able to kind of sell it to developers, which is exactly what has happened. And it happened in the week, actually, right before we were going to go do a program with Lisa up at Stonghouse as an extension of her work in Earthwork. The university finally decided to take a look at the roof and said, no, it's full of mold, you can't go in anymore. So that is known to be one step in the development moment. It does strike me as well.
Oh, so we did the show in tents outside.
Yeah, we did. All the work that we were planning to do in the rooms inside that house, we got some tents and we did it outside because that's how Anishinaabe do things sometimes. They kick us out and we'll just do it, and we'll do it in tents outside. That's fine. It does strike me, the similarities, though, somehow almost the theme of the work that you were developed in response to Richard Serra, and when we walked out to that site and found those plants, and all those plants, including bloodwort, including these plants that they're not being cared for up there, but they're still making a go of it. They're thriving despite colonialism. They're out there, and they could use our help, but they are thriving in these marginal spaces between like farmers' fields. They're getting covered in Roundup, but they're still doing that work. So all those medicines, they are still there. And it struck me that those life forms, I would call them Anishinaabe life forms, they're our native life forms that are still thriving there despite neglect, that the same thing kind of happened to you while you're thriving in a site of active neglect on the part of the university, right? And they were putting you, and it's not just happened, I guess, it's not just an Anishinaabe thing, it's an artist thing to put an artist in a space of neglect, to kind of like as a holdover until the development happens. So
yeah, that's true. When we did have an exhibition there last spring, and there was this architect. He's from the Southwest. Sorry, I forget his name, but he was there at the event, and he's like, this is part of gentrification when artists take over a rundown space. And I was like, yeah. So I mean, I know that it's a privilege to have a studio. I know I'm not whining about it all too much, but I do think there's a lack of, in general, at the university, is like there needs to be take care of things for the students, for the people that are there. Not just that building, but all the buildings. So anyway.
All right. I could keep asking you about that, but I'll see if there's anyone else who has a question for us. And
anybody.
Yeah, for anybody. We'll open it up to, if you have a question for one of our other panelists, for Michael or Art, we can take the opportunity now to open it up for a more general discussion. But if you have a question, please go ahead, and Melody will pass you the mic. Yeah? Oh, yeah, okay, Melissa.
I just want to ask, your work, it's embodied. Sorry, I'm nervous. A lot of walking and taking space, and the narratives and the audio. It's like an embodied physicality, as a form of artwork. And I just want to see, like, if you have more thoughts and explanations of how you see that within the context of what Mick was asking about. The colonized urban landscape that the work is taking place in. Within that context, how these forms of like walking and narrative, how is that? Do you see that as a intervention or a response, or just this way?
Walking into that field? Oh yeah. I hadn't thought about it as interventionist, but I didn't think of it as interventionist because I think like I'm allowed to, like, I can do this.
Yeah, you're from.
And I even thought about I thought about if somebody did come to try to trespass, and I'd be like, well, I don't know, I'm part of the Williams Treaty, and this is where we can. I don't know. I would just, Yeah, I hadn't thought about it as interventionist as much. Maybe it is, though. Maybe I'm always a little bit resistant to like just concluding that it's an intervention. And the embodied part, I think it's maybe I've been interested in like thinking about engaging like all of our senses or all of my senses and thinking about. I think that I haven't really thought or like theorized about this idea of embodiment totally connected to my work, but I guess it is in that way. It's a response, so it's a sensory response because we did, sensory. You're thinking about what am I seeing? What am I smelling? What am I feeling? I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know if that helps at all, but I think that's all I have to say about that. So
Sure. Well, I'll just follow up because I remember you talking about the sensory walk as part of your students' methodology for engaging with their plants, right? Because they're ecology students, botany students, but
they're environmental studies students, but they all have, it's very interdisciplinary, so they do lots of different stuff.
Yeah, well, and so they were talking about how they were doing their study with you, and you told me about the sensory walk, which I thought was a beautiful methodology because, again, it uses all those senses. So that's when they're going out there and paying attention to everything and letting almost curiosity guide them.
Yeah, curiosity, definitely. That's a big thing.
Thank you for that question. We have another in the back. No, yeah, it's you with your hand waving. It's you. We'll bring you a mic.
Miigwech. Waseish Kongan is Nikas, Wabashashi and Dodam. Mississauga, Michi Sagik, and Dow. I just find this just so interesting. A couple of things. People have talked about this energy jazz. Each one of you in your own way have expressed that term, including our chairperson of the panel, energy. And so I'd be interested in you guys talking about that a little bit more, but also the whole issue of ceremony. What part does that play in your practice? Because I know we're engaged in this time of rerouting and regrowing and revitalization, at the same time facing a lot of resistance in many, many spheres. I wonder about your practice, how, or even if that's included in that, because we know that ceremony does have a relationship to energy. And also, burning, that's taking life, huh? In some sort of manner. So, as we sort of make those connections to those ancient ones, whether they be ancestral or Mother Earth, the plants, which were here way before the human species, for the most part. I'm just wondering how you're thinking about that as artists who are engaged in the creative act or the destructive act, however you see that process.
All right, thank you for that question. If any of you would like to, we've been sticking pretty much to the secular realm, but if we want to speak about it.
Okay, first I just want to say that in my undergrad, I had a job at Lakehead University doing wild rice research. So I worked for the biology department. I took out grad students and I was kind of the Indian guide that showed them what Potamagitan robinsii looked like. I don't even know what the normal name of the plant is. I just know scientific names. That's weird. Anyways, I think I didn't show a lot of my work, a lot of the public artwork that I produce A lot of it is very arduous. It's working with copper, working with stone, and it's very much a tactile, sort of almost violent way of interacting with materials. And I think when you're talking about this activation, I think in part that activation happens, or that bringing to life happens through process, through endeavor, through persistence. So if you think about how sand is sitting on a beach, that sand has been worked by waves for millions and millions of years and worn down by the interaction between materials. And that persistence is kind of the thing that I endeavor to do in my own practice. But it's not necessarily having to be a hard thing. And I think with the snow fences, those are the first moments in my practice where I'm using something that is demonstrating it without me arduously demonstrating it. I'm using the material to speak about something in a very clear and concise way, without me actually having to use my physical body. So I think that's an interesting part of that.
I'd say that that ceremony is not part of my artwork, but it might enable it at moments. Like, I guess I mean by that is, paying respect to, I don't just go out picking a whole bunch of plants and, whatever. There's a certain consideration and a kind of, paying respect to that life and offering, something for that. So in that way, but I wouldn't say that that's part of the work, the primary part of the work, but it needs to happen for the work to happen. I guess that's a kind of part of thing. But I wouldn't make it the center of it, because it's just the way, it's not, I don't need to make, it's just how I'm, I guess, functioning in the world.
Yeah,
in
it's
a
part
way,
of your
maybe?
part of the ethics. I think.
Yeah.
I'll note that we did offer our tobacco before we went out there. It's not ceremonial, but it is ethical. I think that's the way. If you wish to respond, you know.
Offering tobacco is ceremony to me. So we do that all the time. Every spring, every fall, we feast. We feast the ancestors, we feast with them. We feast the land, we feast the water, the animals, everything. So there is ceremony involved. And so when we do this, we invite the community members. And when we do that, the community members, some of them bring their children. So they're witnessing that, and they're learning how to the process of taking care of the land and the water, and how we're honoring those things and giving thanks for giving us life. So yes, there's ceremony.
Miigwech, thank you for bringing us to that point. Unless we have another, I don't see other hands burning questions, but I do invite did I say burning hands? I'm getting hungry, and we do have a reception that I would like to invite you all to join us at the Art Museum following this presentation. So I think we'll end up there, and I encourage you to visit the artist's websites and learn more about their practices. But unless we have any final business, I think that's it for you this evening. Please join us at the Art Museum after.